An arrogant duchess humiliated a poor man in public, and the next day she found out he was her fiancé. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The bells of Seville were ringing for the afternoon prayer when Catalina de Aranda stepped out of her carriage. The sound hardly reached her. Noise belonged to the city. Silence belonged to her. People moved aside before the hem of her gown even appeared. A boy selling chestnuts dragged his basket closer to the wall. A woman with a baby lowered her head. Men who a moment earlier had been laughing suddenly straightened and grew quiet. Catalina walked as she had been taught since childhood, chin high, gaze steady, steps unhurried. A lady of Seville never rushed. A duchess never needed to. Her maid, Elena, hurried a pace behind her, trying not to stumble on the uneven stones. "Your Grace," Elena whispered, "your father said not to tarry. The notary will arrive this evening and—" "The notary has always waited for the house of Aranda," Catalina answered calmly. "He will not begin to run now." She let her eyes sweep the square. The stalls, the baskets, the carts, the voices, it was all distant like a painting. She had been told she was admired in Seville, respected, feared perhaps. She accepted all three as naturally as she accepted the air. Ahead, her two footmen walked with the assured air of men who knew the crowd would open for them. One looked back. "Make way for her Grace, the Duchess of Aranda," he called. The wave formed instantly. People pulled back, gathering their skirts and bundles. Catalina nodded inwardly. The order of the world. The nobility walked, the others yielded. She had nearly crossed the square when the order broke. A young man emerged from a narrow alley, carrying a large wooden crate in his arms. It seemed almost too heavy for him. He was dressed in a plain white shirt, sleeves rolled and dark trousers worn at the knees. His boots had seen better days. Sweat darkened the fabric along his collar. He did not see her at first. "Careful," one vendor hissed. "The Duchess." The young man turned his head. For a heartbeat, he froze. The crate shifted. An orange rolled from the top, then another, then a third. One bounced, struck the ground, and rolled to stop against the tip of Catalina's shoe. The square held its breath. Catalina stopped. The light breeze tugged at the ribbon of her hat, but she did not touch it. She looked down at the orange, then at the crate, then at the man. His eyes met hers. They were not the eyes of a boy, though his clothes suggested an apprentice, a porter, someone used to carrying others' burdens. They were dark, steady, and unexpectedly composed, as if he had seen many things heavier than a noblewoman's displeasure. He bent quickly, trying to gather the scattered fruit. "I beg your pardon, Your Grace," he said. His voice was low, rough with effort, but clear. The crate slipped. No harm was meant. Eleanor shifted nervously. One of the footmen stepped forward. "Out of the way, man. You blocked the Duchess's path." The young man moved at once, but another orange escaped and rolled again across the stones. A little boy laughed. A woman covered the child's mouth too late. Catalina heard the laughter. It touched something sharp in her. She spoke without raising her voice. "Is this how you work in Seville now? Dropping your goods at the feet of your betters and calling it no harm?" The young man straightened, oranges trapped awkwardly against his chest. His face had gone still. "I asked your pardon, Your Grace," he repeated. "Of course you did," she replied. "What else could you do? Perhaps next time you might ask the ground as well, for letting you be so clumsy upon it." A few uneasy chuckles ran through the crowd. The sound pleased her more than it should have. Eleanor tugged discreetly at Catalina's sleeve. "Your Grace, the stones are uneven," the maid whispered. He did not see. Catalina did not look away from the man. "If you cannot see where you walk," she said, "you should not carry more than your wits can manage, though I begin to suspect that even an empty crate would be challenge enough." The chuckles grew bolder. A merchant laughed outright. A pair of apprentices grinned at each other. The young man heard them, his jaw tightened for a moment. He could have bowed deeply, stammered, begged the crowd's mercy. Most in his place would have. Instead, he drew a breath, steady and controlled, and inclined his head only slightly. "I may be clumsy, Your Grace," he said quietly, "but at least my work is my own. I carry what my hands have earned." The square seemed to shrink. It was not insolence, not quite. His tone was measured, respectful. yet there was something in the words that brushed against her pride like a rough cloth. One of the footmen bristled. "Mind your tongue," he snapped. "You speak to a duchess." "I know to whom I speak," the young man answered, still looking at Catalina. "And I know to what I speak as well." A murmur ran through the onlookers. A beggar somewhere near the fountain sucked in his breath. Catalina felt heat rise in her chest. She could have walked on. She could have let the footman push the man aside, gather the oranges, restore the old order. But his gaze, quiet, unwavering, held her in place. "Your tongue is sharper than your balance," she remarked. "Perhaps that is why you have no better position than carrying crates. Men of true worth learn when to hold their words." "And some," he replied, "never learn what their words cost others." It was softly spoken. No one might have heard it had the square not been so still, but the silence made every syllable clear. A woman in the back gasped. Eleanor's hand tightened on Catalina's sleeve. "Your Grace, please," Eleanor murmured. "He's just—" "Enough," Catalina said. The word fell like a stone. She took a step closer to the young man, stopping just beyond the reach of the scattered oranges. The smell of citrus and dust mingled in the warm air. "You forget yourself," she told him. "You stand in the square because people like my family built the stones under your feet. You eat because we bring trade and work to this city. And yet you dare to speak as if we owe you apology?" His fingers pressed against the rough wood of the crate. For a second she thought she saw anger, bright and swift, flash in his eyes, but it vanished almost at once. "I do not ask for apology, Your Grace," he said, "only for decency." The word irritated her more than a shouted insult would have. Decency, from him to her. "Decency is earned," Catalina replied crisply, "not dropped at a lady's feet along with cheap fruit." Laughter broke out again, louder this time. The people who laughed were careful to keep some distance from the Duchess, but laughter is a contagious habit. A few men slapped each other's shoulders. The little boy by the chestnut cellar laughed again, with the open cruelty children sometimes learn from adults. The young man's face did not twist, did not flush. He only listened. Then he set the crate carefully on the ground, stooped to gather the last oranges, and placed them back one by one. When he straightened, he looked at her once more. For the first time, Catalina felt the weight of that gaze. There was no pleading in it, no admiration, no fear. Only a knowledge of her that she had not granted him the right to possess. As if the moment in the square had stripped something away for both of them. He bowed very slightly. "Forgive the disturbance, Your Grace," he said. "I will trouble your path no further." He lifted the crate again, now secure in his arms, and stepped aside. The crowd parted for him as it had for her, but for a different reason. Some looked away ashamed, others stared curiously. A few men nodded to him as he passed, though no one dared say anything aloud. Catalina watched his back until he vanished into the crowd. Elena whispered, "Perhaps he did not." "Elena," Catalina cut in, "if we stopped for every clumsy porter in Seville, we would never reach the cathedral." She turned and resumed her walk. Yet the square did not feel quite the same. The laughter around her rang differently, thinner somehow, as if a note had gone slightly out of tune and refused to correct itself. By the time she reached the carriage on the far side of the square, the exchange already seemed distant. A minor incident. Not worth another thought. She told herself so twice. Still, when the carriage door closed and the driver snapped the reins, she found her fingers closing more tightly than usual around her gloves. Elena settled across from her, eyes lowered. "Your Grace," the maid said carefully. "The man, he did apologize." Catalina looked out the small window, watching the city slide by. Whitewashed walls. Cloth hung from windows to dry. A woman pouring water into a basin. "He apologized because he had no choice," she answered. "Do not mistake necessity for virtue, Eleanor." "Yes, Your Grace." They rode in silence for a moment. "Do you think he will be in trouble with his master?" Elena ventured. "If his master has any sense, he will teach him to keep his eyes open and his mouth closed," Catalina replied. Eleanor nodded, but she seemed unconvinced. Catalina chose not to pursue it. The palace gates appeared, tall and familiar. Home, the place where the world was simple, where her name meant what it was supposed to mean. The carriage rolled into the courtyard and halted. A footman opened the door. "Welcome back, Your Grace," he said. Inside, the air was cooler. The floors gleamed. The walls were lined with portraits of Aranda ancestors, solemn and sure. Catalina felt herself settle, as if her spine found again its proper shape. Her father's steward, Señor Vargas, approached with a quick bow. "Your Grace, His Excellency the Duke is in his study," he said. "He has asked that you be informed of his satisfaction with your appearance this morning at the cathedral. Please inform my father that I am back and will pay my respects before supper," Catalina replied. Vargas hesitated. "He mentioned, Your Grace, that there may be news, matters to be discussed regarding the future of the house." Catalina smiled faintly. "My father is always discussing the future of the house," she said. "It has survived for 3 centuries. It will survive another evening." Vargas bowed again and stepped aside. In her chambers, Elena helped her remove hat and gloves. Catalina sat at her dressing table while the maid loosened the pins in her hair. "Elena," Catalina said after a pause, "what did you think of the man in the square?" Elena's hands hesitated for a fraction of a second. "I think," she said cautiously, "that he was tired and afraid of losing the oranges. And perhaps proud." "Proud?" Catalina lifted an eyebrow at the reflection in the mirror. "A man with nothing has no right to pride." "He had his work," Elena answered softly. "Sometimes that is all a person has. It can be enough to make them stand straighter." Catalina considered the answer. Then she shook her head. "Pride in rags is only stubbornness," she said. "People who carry crates should remember it is crates they carry, not crowns." "Yes, Your Grace," Elena murmured. Still, when the maid left and Catalina was alone, she did not at once rise to change her dress. She sat hands folded, watching herself in the mirror. She saw the polished image everyone else saw, the dark hair arranged neatly, the fine fabric, the composed mouth. But beneath that she felt something she had not expected, a small sharp discomfort. She tried to name it, and could not. It was not guilt. She had done nothing wrong according to the rules she had always followed. A duchess corrected insolence. A duchess reminded people of their place. This was how order was maintained, yet the memory of the young man's eyes refused to fade. "Decency is earned," she had said. "Only for decency?" he had asked. She rose abruptly, annoyed with herself. "This is foolish," she muttered. She moved through the chamber, selecting a lighter gown for the evening. When Elena returned, Catalina allowed the maid to dress her once more. They spoke of neutral things, the quality of the new silk, the rumor that a marquise's daughter might marry into a nearby house, the coming visit of a bishop. By supper, the day already seemed further away, the palace filled with familiar sounds, the clatter of dishes, the low voices of servants, the echo of footsteps on stone. The Duke of Aranda arrived late to table. He looked more tired than usual, with faint shadows under his eyes, but his posture remained upright. His hair, streaked with grey, was carefully brushed back. "My daughter," he said, kissing Catalina lightly on the forehead. "Forgive my delay. Matters of accounts, always accounts." "Are they so troublesome, father?" she asked. "Nothing beyond our ability," he replied with a practiced smile. "The world changes. Land alone does not command what it once did. One must be clever, flexible. I am certain you will be both," she said. They ate in relative quiet. The Duke asked about the cathedral, the bishop's sermon, the number of people in the square. Catalina answered calmly, omitting the incident with the crate. It seemed too small to be worth his attention. After the meal, her father dabbed his lips with his napkin and sat back, studying her. "You are nearly 23, Catalina," he said. "So I have been reminded, father," she replied lightly. "It is an age to consider more than gowns and processions," he continued. "You have always served our name well. You carry yourself as an Aranda, but there comes a time when service is required in another form." She knew what he meant. Every noble daughter did. Marriage, alliance. She had been suggested to this house and that over the years, but nothing had been settled. Her father was a careful man. He did not give away his daughter, or his title, lightly. "I will do what is proper," she said. "I know you will," he answered, and his gaze softened briefly. "You are my pride, Catalina." He said nothing more on the subject that evening. She retired early. Eleanor brushed out her hair once more, then left with a candle, closing the door quietly behind her. Alone in the half-dark, Catalina lay in her bed and closed her eyes. At first she saw the cathedral, the bishop's raised hand, the rows of candles. The images were orderly, calm. Then the cathedral dissolved into the square. The sun returned, brighter and harsher. Oranges rolled again along the stones. She heard the laughter. She heard her own voice. She heard his. Only for decency. She turned over restlessly on the mattress. It was nothing, she told herself again. A brief scene, forgotten by all by now. Yet when sleep finally came, it brought no clear dreams, only fragments, a crate, a gaze, a word, decency, that followed her like an echo through corridors that did not belong to her palace. She woke with the dim light of late afternoon already fading outside her windows. She had not meant to sleep so long. A soft knock sounded on her door. "Come in," she called. A young servant entered, bowing deeply. "Your Grace," he said, "Senor Vargas sent me. His Excellency the Duke requests your presence in his study." "Now?" Catalina asked, surprised. "Is it not near supper?" "He said it is a matter of urgency," the servant replied, "concerning your future and the future of the House of Aranda." Catalina's heartbeat quickened once, though her face remained calm. "Tell my father I will attend him at once," she said. The servant bowed and withdrew. Eleanor helped her smooth her gown and adjust her hair. Catalina walked through the corridor, each step echoing lightly under her shoes. The portraits watched her pass with painted eyes. At the end of the corridor, the door to her father's study stood closed. Voices leaked through the wood. Her father's tone, low but firm. Another voice answered, a man's voice she did not recognize, deeper, unfamiliar, yet already speaking with a confidence that made her pause. She stopped before the door and laid her hand on the handle, wondering what decision about her life had already been made on the other side. Catalina turned the handle and entered. The study smelled faintly of ink and wax. Her father sat behind his heavy desk, a ledger open before him. Senor Vargas stood to one side. A third man occupied the chair near the window, dark coat, neat cravat, a leather case at his feet. Catalina had never seen him before. The Duke rose at once. "My daughter," he said, "come in, close the door." She did so, glancing briefly at the stranger. "Senor Ruiz," the Duke said, gesturing toward him, "this is my daughter, Catalina de Aranda." The man stood and bowed. "Your Grace," he said, "it is an honor." "Senor Ruiz is a notary," the Duke explained. "He has served several important houses in Seville. He is here on a delicate matter." Catalina inclined her head. "What matter requires a notary and your urgency, father?" she asked. "Vargas hinted at something concerning my future." "It concerns the future of us all," the Duke replied. "Sit, Catalina." She sat on the chair opposite his desk. Her father looked at Ruiz. "You may speak freely," he told the notary. "My daughter must hear what you have told me." Ruiz clasped his hands. "Your Grace," he began, choosing his words carefully, "you are aware that the older noble houses of Spain face new demands. Trade, maritime ventures, lending, all these have created fortunes that do not rest solely on land." "My father knows this, I am sure," Catalina said. "He has said much the same." The Duke gave a brief, weary smile. "Indeed," he said, "and I have taken steps to ensure that the House of Aranda is not left behind. Land is honor, but gold oils its hinges." Ruiz nodded. "A man of considerable fortune recently passed from this world," he said. "Don Esteban Herrera. You may have heard his name." Catalina searched her memory. "A merchant?" she asked. "One who dealt in grain and shipping?" "Yes," Ruiz said. "Raised to minor nobility for his services to the crown, he had no children, but he did have a ward. A young man he took in as a boy." Catalina folded her hands in her lap. "And what has this to do with us?" she asked. Ruiz opened his case and drew out a folded document. "Don Esteban left his estate," he said, "to that young man, to Miguel Herrera." The name brushed against something in her mind, but it did not yet attach to a face. "Your father," Ruiz went on, "has negotiated an agreement with this heir, a mutually beneficial alliance." "An alliance?" Catalina repeated slowly. "You mean a marriage?" The Duke's gaze met hers. "Yes," he said simply. She straightened. "Without a word to me," she said, her voice flat. "You knew this day must come," the Duke replied. "You are my only child. The title passes through you. So I cannot leave the future of our name to chance or romance. I have been careful. You deserve nothing less." "Careful?" she said. "With whom have you been careful, father? I know nothing of this Miguel Herrera." "That will be remedied," he answered. "He is of no kin to us. You need not fear any impropriety. His origin is humble, but his education is sound, and his fortune is considerable. Enough to secure our lands, to restore what the years and wars have worn thin." Señor Ruiz added, "Don Esteban wished his heir to be allied with a house of old name and strong honor. He admired the Arandas. He believed such a union would elevate the boy he had raised and assist a family that deserved preservation." Catalina looked at her father. "And what of what I wish?" she asked quietly. The Duke's expression softened. "I wish you could marry for inclination alone," he said. "But we do not live in such times, Catalina, nor in such houses. You have always understood duty. You will not be given to a brute or a fool. I have seen Miguel Herrera. I have spoken with him at length. He is serious, well-mannered, far-sighted. He will not shame our name." "A merchant's heir," she murmured. "A man of means," her father corrected, "and from what I have observed, of character. You may find him more to your liking than you think." "When am I to meet this man who has bought the future of our house?" she asked. Ruiz shifted, but said nothing. The Duke answered, "Tomorrow. We will hold a gathering. Family, a few close allies. The engagement will be announced. Miguel will be presented." "So soon?" Catalina said. "Matters of estate do not wait on our moods," her father replied. "I have delayed as long as prudence allows. You will have time to become acquainted before the wedding. The contract, however, must be settled." She looked from him to the notary and back again. "And if I refuse?" she asked, her tone light but her eyes sharp. The Duke did not flinch. "You will not," he said. "You are an Aranda. You know what rests on your shoulders." A small silence. Catalina felt the room tighten around her. "At least tell me this," she said. "Is this Miguel Herrera young, old, crippled, crude?" "He is young," the Duke replied. "No more than a few years your senior. He walks with a straight back, speaks with restraint, and listens more than he talks. I have seen worse husbands among dukes and marquises." Ruiz said, "He asked particularly that your consent be genuinely given, Your Grace. Don Esteban taught him to value freedom. He does not wish to bind a lady who despises him." Catalina lifted her chin. "I do not despise him," she said. "I do not know him. I despise being treated as if I were a parcel in a ledger." "You are my daughter," the Duke said softly. "You are also the duchy. Both truths exist together. I ask you to trust my judgment, Catalina, as I have trusted your obedience all these years." His voice had a tired warmth that pricked her conscience. She exhaled slowly. "Very well," she said. "I will meet this Miguel Herrera. I will greet him as befits his role. But I promise no more than courtesy, father. Affection must be earned." "That is all any man can ask," the Duke replied. "Even a duke's daughter." He reached across the desk and briefly took her hand. "In time," he said, "you may thank me." She was not certain. The next day the palace changed its skin. Servants hurried along corridors, polishing railings, arranging chairs. Fresh linen appeared on tables in the great hall. Vases were filled. The cook shouted orders in the kitchen. Elena hovered at Catalina's side, hands busy with silk and pins. "Hold still, Your Grace," she begged. "If this seam sits wrong, the whole gown will look crooked." "The whole gown is a prison," Catalina muttered, but she stood still. Elena smiled faintly. "A pretty prison, at least," she said. When Catalina's hair was arranged and her gown settled, she studied herself in the mirror. The same face, the same grace. Yet the eyes looking back at her held a question they had not held before. Eleanor seemed to sense it. "Are you anxious?" she asked. "An Aranda is not anxious," Catalina replied. "That does not answer," Elena said gently. Catalina's lips curved slightly. "Very well," she said. "I am curious." She did not add what else she was. Irritated, unsettled, on guard. In the hall her father stood near the entrance speaking with Señor Vargas and an elderly aunt who had arrived early. "There she is," the aunt said. "Luz del cielo, Catalina, you look every inch a duchess." "Let us hope it is enough," the Duke said quietly. Guests arrived in clusters. a marquis and his wife, a pair of cousins from Cordoba, a judge from the city, a handful of wealthy citizens whose fortunes her father had courted with careful invitations over the years. Whenever someone approached, Catalina smiled. She answered questions, accepted compliments. Yes, she had heard there was to be a special announcement. No, she had no details to share. It was her father's privilege. As the room filled, a low hum of speculation rose. "I hear he is a banker," one lady whispered near the window. No, said another. "A ship owner, or perhaps a wine merchant. Men who count coins in the dark are all the same to me." "They say his guardian left him a mountain of gold," a gentleman remarked. "Gold buys manners, does it not?" "Sometimes," his companion replied. "Sometimes it only makes bad manners louder." Catalina caught fragments, but she pretended not to. Her eyes kept drifting toward the door. Finally, Vargas cleared his throat, and the murmur fell like a wave receding. The Duke stepped forward. "Friends," he said, "thank you for honoring my house with your presence. You know the Arandas. You know our history, our loyalty to the crown, our ties to this city. You also know that the world turns. Old stones must stand upon new foundations if they are to endure." A ripple of nods, polite approval. "In that spirit," he continued, "I have the joy to announce an alliance that will secure the future of our name and, I hope, bring honor to both parties. My daughter, Catalina de Aranda, Duchess of these lands by right, will be betrothed to a man whose merit and fortune recommend him to any house in Spain." He paused. "Miguel Herrera," he said. The name struck her chest like a small blow, not because she recognized it, but because the syllables carried a faint echo of the study, the notary's voice, her father's plans. The doors opened. A man entered. For a heartbeat, she saw only the outline. Tall enough, shoulders straight, dark hair. Then his face came clear. The crate, the oranges, the quiet eyes in the square. Her breath stopped. It was the same man she had humiliated the day before. He wore a well-cut coat now, clean linen, boots polished to a soft shine. There was no trace of the dust from the plaza, no sweat-darkened shirt, no crate in his hands, yet she would have known him in a crowd 10 times larger. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her skirt. Elena, standing discreetly at the side of the hall, paled as well. Her eyes flew to Catalina's face. Miguel Herrera walked with measured steps into the center of the room. He bowed first to the Duke. "Your Excellency," he said. "I am honored." Then he turned to Catalina. He bowed again. "Your Grace," he said. His voice was the same as in the square, low, controlled. But now it carried no strain, only a calm that cut deeper than any raised voice would have. Catalina's mind raced. He is the heir. He is the alliance. He is the man with enough gold to hold my father's future. He is the one whose oranges rolled at my feet. Her father looked at her, expectant. "Catalina," he said, "greet your future husband." She felt every eye in the hall upon her. Nobles, citizens, servants hovering in doorways. Any sign of hesitation would ignite questions. She forced her lips into a smile. "Señor Herrera," she said, the words almost catching. "Welcome to the House of Aranda." His gaze met hers for a brief second. There was no open accusation in it, no mocking triumph. Only a knowledge they shared, and the others did not. "Thank you, Your Grace," he replied. "It is a house I have long respected." The Duke extended his arms. "Then let it be known," he declared, "that Catalina de Aranda and Miguel Herrera are this day engaged in marriage. May God bless this union and our 2 houses." Applause broke out. Some sincere, some calculating. Smiles appeared like masks quickly donned. An aunt dabbed her eyes with a lace handkerchief. "How romantic," she murmured. "A new man for a new century." A cousin leaned toward another. "A duchess and a merchant's ward," he whispered. "Whatever will Seville say?" Señor Ruiz appeared with documents in hand, approaching the Duke to arrange signatures later. For now, the important part was spectacle. Wine was brought, trays of small cakes. Guests moved closer to offer congratulations. "Your Grace," one lady said to Catalina, "you are brave to embrace such a modern alliance." "Fortune favors the bold," a gentleman chimed in. Catalina smiled and answered with phrases she did not feel. "Spain changes," she said. "We must change with it." Miguel stood near her, accepting handshakes and nods. When people addressed him, he replied with modesty, emphasizing Don Esteban's guidance, not his own merit. Humble, yet no longer the humble man of the square. At one moment, the judge from the city said jovially, "I understand you come from simple stock, Señor Herrera. It must be quite a step, from counting crates to marrying a duchess." Miguel answered lightly, "Crates teach a man to keep his balance, Your Honor. It is a useful skill in any walk of life." The judge laughed, pleased. Catalina felt the words like a faint sting. Eventually, the Duke murmured to her, "Protocol allows the engaged couple a short conversation alone. I will have the small salon prepared." He nodded to Vargas, who quietly directed a servant. Miguel heard and inclined his head. "If your grace permits," he said to Catalina, "I would be glad for a chance to speak privately. Refusing would be a public scene." She forced another smile. "Of course," she replied. They walked together through a side door, followed at a distance by Vargas, who would remain outside as chaperone. Servants lit candles quickly in the small salon and withdrew. The room was quiet when the door closed behind them. Catalina stood near a narrow table, keeping her back straight. "You must be pleased," she said coolly. "Yesterday a crate, today a duchess. Seville is generous with its surprises." He did not smile. "Seville is the same as always," he answered. "It is people who change their clothes." She met his eyes. "You knew," she said, "when you walked into that hall just now. You knew who I was." "I knew who you were yesterday," he replied, "in the square." She felt her cheeks grow warm. "You could have spoken then," she said. "You could have told me your name. And what would that have changed?" he asked quietly. "Would you have insulted me more softly, knowing I had gold in the bank?" Her lips pressed together. "I was not told of your identity," she said. "My father concealed the details from me. I had no idea." "I believe you," he said. "That is not the point." His calmness unnerved her even more than anger would have. "Oh, what is the point then?" she demanded. "That you have come into my home to remind me that I was less than gracious in a public square. You have my apology. I should not have spoken as I did yesterday. I was impatient." "Impatient," he repeated. "Is that the word you choose? Would you prefer unthinking?" she said sharply. "Very well. I was unthinking. I spoke as I have always spoken to those who block my way without care." His gaze held hers. "And now that you know the man you spoke to is not just a poor porter, but your future husband," he asked, "do you regret the words because they were unjust, or because they fell upon someone whose opinion matters to you?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. "Does it matter which?" she said. "It matters to me," he replied. He moved a little closer, though still at a polite distance. "I remember every line you spoke," he said, "not because I cling to them like a wound, but because they were not new. I have heard them or words like them my whole life, from people who see a man's clothes and decide they know his worth. I am not responsible for all of Seville," she answered, "only for my own conduct." "Then we speak of your conduct," he said, "not of the city's. You did not simply ask me to step aside, Your Grace. You made the people laugh. You used your rank as a whip." She flinched inwardly at the image. "You speak as if I had beaten you," she said. "No," he answered. "You merely reminded me of a truth I already knew, that some people believe others exist only to stay out of their way." She drew a breath. "You have come into great power very quickly, Señor Herrera," she said. "You must learn to be careful with your judgments. Nobility carries responsibilities as well as customs." "I have carried responsibilities since I was 10, he replied simply. "They did not come with a title, but they were no lighter." Silence stretched between them for a moment. His gaze did not waver. "Why did you say nothing?" she asked at last. "In the hall, when people spoke of your simple stock, when they laughed about the story in the square." He studied her. "Because it was not my place to correct them," he said. "It was yours." The words landed like stones. She looked away, then forced herself to meet his eyes again. "You wanted me to feel what you felt," she said. "I wanted you to hear your own tone echoed back to you," he replied, "without my raising my voice, without my saying one rude word." "And now," she asked softly, "now that you have seen me stand there, smiling while others repeat our encounter as entertainment, are you satisfied?" He hesitated. "No," he said. "I am not satisfied." I did not enjoy it as much as I thought I would. She frowned slightly. What did you expect? She asked. I expected to find it easy to watch you taste what you gave me, he said. It was not. Something in his voice was different now, less hard. I do not ask for your forgiveness, she said quickly, unsettled by the shift. We are strangers under the same roof. If this engagement displeases you as much as it disquiets me, perhaps we should both speak to my father. His expression changed again, something almost like amusement ghosting across it. You truly think it is as simple as that? He asked. The contract has yet to be signed, she said. There is still time to reconsider. My father may be disappointed, but he is not cruel. Miguel shook his head slowly. You do not know everything that has been agreed, he said, nor everything that rests upon this union. She felt a faint chill. What do you mean? She asked. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he stepped back, reclaiming the careful distance between them. I mean that this engagement is far more valuable to your house than to mine, he said at last, and that I am not the one who will be begging for it to continue. Her throat tightened. You speak in riddles, she said. If there is something I should know, say it plainly. Not here, he replied. Not yet. There are contract's conditions. Your father will tell you when he chooses. For now, understand this. I will not live as a man who must bow his head to avoid the sting of another's pride. If we are to marry, it will not be as mistress and servant. If? She echoed. You think you can cast off an alliance with a duchess as easily as you might dismiss a crate from your path? He held her gaze. I think, he said quietly, that for the first time in my life I'm in a position to choose whom I allow to humiliate me. The words struck harder than any insult. A knock sounded at the door. Your Grace. It was Vargas's voice. Guests await your return. The toasts are about to begin. Miguel looked toward the door, then back at her. We should not make them wait, he said. He offered his arm. The gesture was perfectly proper, the way any fiancé would present himself to his intended in a noble house. Catalina hesitated only a second, then placed her hand upon his sleeve. His arm was steady under her fingers. The distance between them felt shorter than the width of the room. As they walked together back toward the hall, his last words circled in her mind like a tightening ring, making her suddenly afraid to learn what, exactly, her family had risked on this engagement. The hall welcomed them with light and sound. Glasses chimed, voices rose in cheerful waves, and for a moment Catalina could almost believe they were any ordinary engaged couple returning from an innocent stroll. Vargas announced them in a clear voice. Her Grace, the Duchess of Aranda, and Señor Miguel Herrera. Heads turned, smiles brightened. The Duke lifted his glass. There they are, he called. The future of our house. A cheer went up, polite but warm. Miguel released Catalina's arm only when propriety required it. A servant slipped a cup of wine into her hand. Another did the same for him. To the bride and groom, someone cried. Glasses lifted. Catalina raised hers, her fingers steady by long habit. To the house of Aranda and its new ally, said the judge from the city. May their union be fruitful, prosperous, and very modern. Laughter followed. Catalina brought the rim of the glass to her lips and let the wine touch her tongue, more out of necessity than desire. Her mind was elsewhere, circling around Miguel's last words in the small salon. More valuable to your house than to mine. The Duke approached them, cheeks rosy with satisfaction. You both acquitted yourselves well, he said. The eyes of Seville were on you today. They liked what they saw. I am glad to hear it, Father, Catalina replied. Miguel, the Duke added, turning to him, tomorrow we shall attend Mass together. The city must see us united before God as well as before men. I would be honored, Your Excellency, Miguel answered. And you, Catalina, the Duke said, will walk with your fiancé through the square after the service. Let Seville see its future Duchess beside the man who will help carry her burden. She inclined her head. As you wish, she said. Later, when the guests had thinned and the sky outside the windows darkened, Catalina retreated to her chamber. Elena unfastened the clasps of her gown with careful fingers. He seems different today, Elena said softly. Señor Herrera, I mean. Not like yesterday in the square. He is dressed differently, Catalina replied. That alone changes how people see a man. And how you see him, Elena dared to ask. Catalina paused. How I see him is my concern, she said. It is enough that I treat him as custom requires." Elena lowered her eyes. "Yes, Your Grace." The next morning dawned clear. The bells of the cathedral called the city to prayer as they always did, but today their sound felt heavier to Catalina, as if each note carried a reminder. Everyone is watching. At the palace steps, Miguel waited with the Duke. He wore a dark coat again, nothing ostentatious but well cut. When Catalina approached, he bowed. "Good morning, Your Grace," he said. "Good morning, Señor Herrera," she answered. The Duke's carriage bore them to the cathedral. People on the streets stopped to look as they passed. A Duchess and her fiancé. Catalina noticed that some faces she recognized from the square were there, mixed in with others. The chestnut boy, the woman with the baby, a vendor with red hands from scrubbing. They entered the church with measured steps. Incense floated in the cool air. The bishop greeted them with practiced warmth. "My dear Duke," he said, "and this must be the celebrated Miguel Herrera. We have heard much of your generosity." "Your Excellency is kind," Miguel replied. "And the bride," the bishop continued, turning to Catalina. "May God bless you both with patience and understanding." Patience and understanding. The words felt pointed. They took their places near the front. The service began. Latin words rose and fell, familiar but distant. Catalina knelt, stood, crossed herself at all the right times. Her body knew the motions. Her mind kept slipping to practical thoughts. The square, the walk after, the eyes. When the mass ended, the Duke murmured something to the bishop and then to Miguel. "Shall we?" he asked. Miguel looked at Catalina. "If your grace does not object," he said. "Of course," she replied. They left the cool shadow of the cathedral and stepped into the bright morning. The square outside overflowed with people spilling from the doors. Some moved on quickly, anxious to return to their stalls and work. Others lingered with clear curiosity. "Walk slowly," the Duke advised. "Let them see you." He fell back a pace, speaking with a magistrate. Catalina and Miguel went ahead, side by side. The same square, the same stones. Today, different roles. Catalina felt eyes on her from all directions, some respectful, some measuring. A woman whispered to another behind a fan. The chestnut boy nudged his friend and pointed discreetly. Miguel, instead of staring straight ahead as many noblemen would have done, glanced around and nodded to people. "Good morning, Don Luis," he said to a merchant near the fountain. The man blinked in surprise, then broke into a smile. "Señor Miguel," he answered, "my congratulations. To your wife as well," Miguel added. "I heard she has recovered from her illness." "She has, thanks to God," the merchant replied, "and perhaps to that physician you recommended." "I only passed along the name," Miguel said. "I am glad she is well." Catalina watched the exchange out of the corner of her eye. A woman with a basket of laundry curtsied clumsily as they passed. "Your Grace," she murmured. Catalina inclined her head. "Good morning," she said. Miguel slowed slightly. "Señora Rosa," he said, "how do your boys fare at the workshop?" "They work hard, señor," she answered, warmth in her voice. "You know they are grateful you put in a word for them." "They earned their place," he replied. "Tell them I expect to see them doing well when next I visit." The woman nodded, delighted. Catalina's lips tightened. "There seems to be no one in this square you do not know," she said under her breath. "Not no one," he answered quietly. "Only the ones whose steps have never touched these stones." She understood the rebuke. Near the steps of the cathedral, the same beggar who had watched them yesterday held out a hand. His clothes were worn but clean today, as if he had made an effort in honor of the occasion. "Your Grace," he said hoarsely. "Señor." Catalina's instinct was to walk on. She had done so many times before, but Miguel stopped, and so she was forced to stop with him. "Good morning," Miguel said to the man. "Have you eaten today?" The beggar shook his head. "Not yet, señor. The Lord will provide." Miguel reached into his coat and drew out a small coin. He placed it in the man's hand. "The Lord works through many hands," he said. "Find yourself bread, at least." The beggar's eyes shone. "Bless you, señor," he said. "Bless you both." Miguel glanced at Catalina. "Your Grace," he said mildly. "Would you care to add anything?" She felt every gaze on her. "I hope you find work," she said, the words coming stiffer than she would have liked. "Charity cannot feed you forever." His gratitude dimmed slightly, but he nodded. "Yes, Your Grace," he murmured. As they moved on, Miguel said softly, "That is one way to speak to a hungry man." "And how would you have me speak?" she replied. "Should I promise him a salary from our estates?" "No," he said. "Only acknowledge that hunger is hard enough without a sermon." "You give me sermons readily enough," she muttered. "I had mine for years," he said, "from people who believed their words cost nothing." Their walk ended at the far side of the square, where the carriage waited. The Duke joined them, pleased. "Well done," he said. "Seville has seen you together." "Yes," Miguel replied. "They have." The Duke looked satisfied. "In a few days," he said, "we will visit the foundation Don Esteban supported, the orphanage near the river. It will please the city to see that the new generation of Herrera and Aranda care for those children." "An orphanage?" Catalina asked. "Yes," her father said. "Don Esteban funded it for years. Miguel has continued his support. You will go with him as his future wife." Miguel's eyes flickered toward her, unreadable. "If her grace is willing," he said. She could hardly refuse. "Of course," she answered. The visit came sooner than she expected. 2 days later, a modest carriage, far simpler than the ducal one, waited at the palace gate. "Why not the usual coach?" Catalina asked. "Because the streets near the river are narrow and uneven," the Duke said. "You will not impress anyone by arriving in gilded wood only to get stuck in the mud." Miguel stood by the carriage door. "Shall we?" he said. Catalina stepped in. The carriage lurched into motion. As they approached the river district, the air changed. Fewer balconies with wrought iron, more washing lines, the smell of bread mixed with tar and water. Children played in alleys. Women talked on doorsteps. The orphanage was a solid but plain building, whitewashed, with a small courtyard in front. A simple cross hung above the door. The directress, a middle-aged woman with quick eyes, came out to greet them. "Señor Miguel," she said warmly, "what a pleasure, and Her Grace, we are honored." "The honor is ours, Señora Marta," Miguel replied. "I wished the Duchess to see the work Don Esteban began." Catalina smiled politely. "I have heard of your efforts," she said. "They do you credit." The courtyard filled quickly with children, some bold, some shy. Their clothes were clean but worn. A little girl with braids stared at Catalina's gown as if it were a costume from a story. Marta clapped her hands. "Children," she said, "this is Señor Miguel Herrera. You know his name. And this is Her Grace, the Duchess of Aranda. They are to be married." A murmur went through the group. Some of the older children bowed awkwardly. The younger ones just stared. "Do you come to stay?" one small boy asked Catalina. She almost laughed. "No," she said gently. "I live in the palace." The boy looked disappointed. Miguel crouched down, bringing himself to the child's eye level. "But she might visit," he said, "if you behave well." "Yes, señor," several children said at once. Marta led them through the building. They saw the dormitory with narrow beds, the kitchen with its large pot, the tiny classroom with slates stacked in a corner. "We do what we can," Marta said. "Don Esteban was generous. Señor Miguel has continued that generosity. And the House of Aranda is honored to be associated with such work," Miguel said loudly enough for the children and the staff to hear. "Is that not so, Your Grace?" Catalina felt the weight of the moment. Refusing would be cruel. She nodded. "Yes," she said. "We are honored." Miguel smiled, the expression small but noticeable. "Then you will not object," he said, still speaking to the room at large, "if we speak to the Duke about a regular contribution from the Aranda estates." Marta's eyes widened. The children looked at Catalina, hopeful. Her heart squeezed. "You place words in my mouth, Señor Herrera," she said quietly. "Not words," he replied under his breath. "Only an opportunity." She drew in a breath, then turned to Marta. "We will review our accounts," she said, "but it is my wish that the House of Aranda support your work as far as we are able." Marta's face lit up. "God bless you, Your Grace," she said. "You do not know what this means." Miguel's gaze flicked to Catalina, thoughtful. As they left the orphanage, he said, "Thank you." "For what?" she asked. "For not turning away," he answered. "You could have." "I could hardly crush their hopes in front of you and the children," she said. "You could have postponed," he pointed out. "Hidden behind delays, many do." "Do not mistake one decision for a transformation," she said. "I am not some project for you to measure." "Perhaps not," he said, "but moments reveal more than speeches." Back at the palace, life resumed its usual rhythm, but not quite. Servants spoke more quietly around her. She caught glances between them that seemed to say, "She has changed," or "She has not changed at all." She could not tell which. Days later came the grand reception in the great hall, larger than the first engagement gathering. More guests, more candles, more music. Elena fussed with Catalina's hair. "Everyone will be there tonight," the maid said. "They say even the governor's wife is coming." "Then I must prepare myself to be observed like a horse at market," Catalina replied. "You are no horse," Elena protested. "Sometimes I feel less free than one," Catalina said lightly. The hall glittered. Nobles from neighboring provinces had arrived. Wealthy traders, their wives adorned in jewels earned in warehouses, not inherited in dowries, mingled with old families. The Duke, standing near the center, beamed like a man who had successfully balanced a difficult sum. "Miguel," he said as his future son-in-law approached, "tonight you will see the full face of civilian society. They will measure you as they measure my daughter. Stand straight. You have nothing to fear." "I fear only stumbling," Miguel answered calmly, in either sense. Catalina joined them, accepting compliments with practiced grace. After some time, music began. Couples moved to the floor for formal dances. Miguel asked Catalina for the first. "May I?" he said. "As you wish," she replied. They danced. His steps were sure. Not as polished as a prince's, perhaps, but steady and attentive. He did not press, did not pull. He guided her through the pattern with quiet concentration. "You dance better than I expected," she said. "I had a good teacher," he answered. "Don Esteban insisted I learn. He said if my gold was to be welcome in certain rooms, my feet must not embarrass it." She almost smiled. "Practical advice," she said. "Very," he agreed. When the dance ended, they returned to the edge of the hall. Others took their place on the floor. Near a side table, a cousin of Catalina's, Don Ricardo, already a little flushed with wine, gathered a small audience. "Have you heard," he said loudly, "how our noble cousin first made the acquaintance of her betrothed?" Catalina stiffened. "Ricardo," another cousin said, "do not be cruel." "Cruel?" Ricardo laughed. "It is a charming story, very modern, like a play." Several heads turned toward them. Catalina felt heat creep up her neck. Ricardo continued. "Our Duchess, so used to having the stones leap aside for her, one day finds a poor fellow in her path. Hey, crate, some oranges, a clumsy step." A ripple of amusement. "She gave him a lesson in manners," Ricardo went on. "Very sharp, very public. The square of Seville rang with it." Catalina's fingers curled at her sides. "Enough," she said quietly. "You exaggerate." "Do I?" Ricardo exclaimed. "You called him clumsy, did you not? And suggested his wits were lighter than his load? I am sure I heard something like that." Someone snickered. "Ricardo," an aunt said, frowning, "it is not fitting to speak so of a lady in public." "I speak of her past behavior," he said, "which she has now corrected by rewarding the man she insulted with her hand. A generous act, no?" Several eyes turned to Miguel, waiting for his reaction. Surely the insulted man would leap to defend his bride, or at least laugh the matter off. Miguel did not laugh. He did not speak at all. He simply looked at Ricardo, then at Catalina, then away. His face remained composed, but his silence filled the space where a defense should have been. The guests read that silence in their own ways. Some took it as good humor, others as a quiet rebuke. Catalina felt it as exposure. She stood there, hearing her own words from the square thrown back at her as entertainment. The laughter that rose now sounded like the laughter then, except this time she was the object. Pride, which had always held her spine straight, faltered. "I spoke harshly that day," she said at last, her voice measured. "It is not a story I find amusing." Ricardo's smile faltered. "I meant no offense, cousin," he said, though his tone held a trace of wounded vanity. "We only jest." "Then choose a better jest," she replied. The hum of voices shifted. The music continued, but something in the current of the room had changed. Miguel excused himself with a small bow. "If you will forgive me," he said, "I must speak with Señor Ruiz about some papers." He walked away, leaving Catalina to stand amid the echoes of her own past cruelty. She felt as if the floor had tilted, the center of balance moved. Eleanor appeared at her elbow, eyes anxious. "Your Grace," she whispered. "Are you well? You look pale." "I am quite well," Catalina said, though her throat felt tight. "Bring me some water." Eleanor hurried off. Catalina stepped back toward a window, needing air. She looked out at the courtyard, dark now, with only a few torches burning. Behind her, laughter rose again as the crowd shifted to fresh topics. Her humiliation faded from their tongues as quickly as Miguel's had from the square. For them, it was just another story. For her, it sat like a stone in her chest. She was still standing there when she heard her father's voice from the corridor beyond the open doorway, low and serious. "We must be clear, Ruiz. I will not sign anything that leaves my house at the mercy of a whim." Curiosity pricked through her discomfort. She moved quietly toward the sound, keeping to the wall. The corridor outside the hall was dimmer. A door stood slightly ajar further along, light spilling from within. Voices came from that room. She hesitated only a moment, then walked softly until she reached the door. Inside, she saw her father, Miguel, and Señor Ruiz around a smaller table. Papers lay spread out, weighted with an inkstand. Ruiz spoke first. "Your Excellency, the terms are as we discussed," he said. "The Aranda estates remain yours in name. Miguel's capital will be invested to restore their yield. In return, certain lands are pledged as security." "Pledged is a gentle word," the Duke said dryly. "Given if the marriage does not take place." "Only if the marriage does not take place," Ruiz agreed. "Or if the union is dissolved in some scandalous manner." Don Esteban wished his heir to be protected against caprice. Caprice. The word stung. Miguel's voice came, calm and firm. "I have no wish to strip the Arandas of their land," he said. "If I had wanted only your fields, Your Excellency, I could have pressed for harsher terms. Don Esteban's will allows it. I chose otherwise." The Duke sighed. "I know," he said. "You have shown more restraint than some noblemen I have dealt with. But the fact remains," Ruiz said gently, "that creditors already press. The loans taken to maintain appearances, to repair the northern vineyard, to fund the new roof at the chapel, these are secured by the expectation of this alliance and its resources. If it fails, the Duke finished, my house stands on sand. The lenders will come like the tide. And those pledged lands," Ruiz said, "will become Miguel's by law. It is better to sign now under friendly terms than later, under pressure." A silence fell. Catalina's hand rested lightly on the doorframe. She could feel her own heartbeat in her fingers. Miguel spoke again, quieter. "I do not want a wife who believes I hold her family hostage," he said. "But I will not enter a union where my life's work can be tossed aside if another name appears more pleasing." "The condition protects both sides," Ruiz said. "It binds you together." The Duke nodded slowly. "Very well," he said. "I will sign. Let it not be said that the House of Aranda breaks its word." He reached for the pen. Catalina drew back into the shadow, her mind racing faster than her feet. She understood now what Miguel had meant. The marriage was not only an alliance, it was a rope thrown to a drowning house, a rope he could pull back at any moment if he chose. If he chose not to marry her, if he withdrew his support, her family might not just lose a useful fortune, they might lose the very lands and prestige that had always seemed as solid as stone under her feet. Catalina did not wait to hear the scratch of the pen. She moved back along the corridor, stepped soundless on the stone until the murmur of voices faded. Only when she reached a small side window did she stop. Outside, the courtyard lay in shadow. The air felt thick. If he refuses, if he walks away. The thought was new. She had always imagined herself the one who chose. Suitors presented, considered, dismissed. Now her future could be decided by a man she had mocked in public. A servant passed, bowed quickly, and went on. Catalina hardly saw him. Her chest felt tight, not from pride this time, but from something closer to fear. That night, she dismissed Elena early. "You look tired, Your Grace," the maid said. "Shall I sit with you until you sleep?" "No," Catalina answered. "Go, rest. You have walked enough for both of us today." When she was alone, she lay in the darkness and stared at the ceiling. She saw again the square, the crate, her own words. She saw Miguel standing in the hall while Ricardo told his story, his silence pressing against her like a mirror. She also saw her father's hand reaching for the pen, heard Ruiz's voice. If it fails, the creditors will come like the tide. Whose choice will make it fail, she wondered. Mine or his? For the first time in her life, she did not know where her power ended and another's began. She slept badly. When she woke, the light filtering through the shutters was thin. "Elena," she called. The maid entered, hair hastily pinned, apron a little crooked. "Yes, Your Grace." "Is my father awake?" "I believe so. Senor Vargas said he was in the chapel early, praying." "Praying?" Catalina repeated softly. "Yes, Your Grace." "And Senor Herrera?" she asked. Elena hesitated. "I saw him in the garden not long ago," she said, "walking by himself." Catalina stood. "Do not call for hot water," she said. "I will go as I am." Elena blinked at her rumpled gown. "Your Grace, your hair." "It is only the garden," Catalina said. "The roses will survive my disarray." She left before Elena could argue. The morning air in the garden was cool. The fountain in the center murmured softly. Paths twisted between hedges and a few orange trees, their leaves dark against the pale sky. Miguel stood near the far wall, hands behind his back, looking not at the flowers, but at the line where the garden ended and the city began. He heard her steps and turned. "Your Grace," he said. He glanced at her hair, at the simple gown, and something like surprise flickered in his eyes. "You're up early," he added. "So are you," she replied. "I am a man of business," he said. "We rise with the sun." "And duchesses rise with their worries," she answered. He watched her for a moment. "Shall I leave you to them?" he asked. "No," she said quickly. "Stay. I came to speak with you." He nodded once. "Very well," he said. "Then let us speak." They stood facing each other with a small space of gravel between them. The palace windows overlooked the garden, but from this corner they were half hidden by trees. Catalina drew in a breath. "I heard you," she said. "Last night, in my father's study. Ruiz, the contracts. The land's pledged if the marriage fails." Miguel's jaw tightened slightly. "You were listening at the door," he said. "Yes," she replied. "Do you wish to scold me for it?" "It would be hypocritical," he said. "I have listened at many doors in my life." "Then we are equal in that at least," she said. "We are not equal," he answered quietly. "You know that as well as I do. That is part of the problem between us." She looked down at her hands, then lifted her gaze again. "Yesterday," she said, "I felt humiliated in that hall. When Ricardo told his story, when you stayed silent, I thought that pain was sharp enough." "And now?" he asked. "Now," she said, "I know there is another humiliation waiting if you choose it. To see my house lose everything because you decide I am not worth the risk." He studied her face. "I do not want your house ruined," he said. "If I had desired revenge, there are easier ways to bleed a family." "Then why those conditions?" she asked. "Why tie our lands to your decision?" "Because without them," he replied, "I would have no protection at all. Your house has stood for centuries. Mine stands only because one man chose to lift a steward's son. If your pride turns against me in a year or 5, what shields me then?" She had not thought of it that way. "Your gold," she said. "Your friends, your orphanage, the people in the square who greet you. They shield my conscience," he said, "not my contract. Without this clause, you could break this engagement tomorrow, and your father would seek another alliance within a season. I would be left with a house half built on promises." She frowned. "You think so little of my word?" she asked. "I think very highly of your father's need," he replied. "Need makes people bend. Careless words in a square are one thing. A broken marriage contract is another." She winced. "You keep coming back to the square," she said. "You will not let me forget it." "Have you truly tried to remember it?" he asked. She opened her mouth to snap, then stopped. The morning light made nothing dramatic, but she felt exposed all the same. "I remember," she said. "I remember oranges at my feet. I remember hearing laughter and thinking it belonged to me. I remember speaking to you as if you were a stain to be wiped away." He said nothing. "And I remember," she went on, "your words, only for decency. At the time I thought them insolent. Now, I think them truer than my own." The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile, not quite disbelief. "That is a start," he said. "A start," she echoed. "Is that all my apology is to you?" A start? You have not apologized, he said. She blinked. I said I was unthinking, she reminded him. That I was harsh. That I regret it. You explained, he said. You named your mood. You did not say, I am sorry I treated you as less than a man. She swallowed. The phrase lodged in her throat like a stone. Pride clung to her tongue, stubborn. At last she forced it out. I am sorry I treated you as less than a man, she said, each word deliberate. I am sorry I used my name to make others laugh at you. I was cruel. The garden seemed to hold its breath. Miguel did not look triumphant. He only closed his eyes for a heartbeat, as if something in him loosened. Do you know, he said, opening them again, how many nobles I have watched do what you did since I was a boy? They drop words like scraps and think the dog's grateful to catch them. I am not a dog, she said, bristling. And I am not the crate you kicked aside, he answered, matching her tone. That is why I was angry. Angry enough to let me be shamed in my own hall, she said. Yes, he replied frankly. I will not pretend otherwise. She lifted her chin. You could have stopped, Ricardo, she said. You could have said it was nothing. Or laughed with him. Instead, you let the room turn and look at me, waiting. I wanted you to feel what it is to stand alone while others use your story for their amusement, he said. I wanted you to know that heat in your chest. You are honest, she said slowly. You asked for plain words, he reminded her. She let out a short breath that was almost a bitter laugh. And did it satisfy you? She asked. Seeing me forced to answer, hearing my cousin repeat my own cruelty like a joke? He looked away for a moment toward the fountain. No, he said. It did not. What did you expect? She asked. I expected it to ease the weight I carried from the square, he answered. Instead, it doubled it. Yours and mine together. Silence settled between them for a few heartbeats, filled only by the soft splash of water. You have seen me at my worst, she said. In the square, in the hall. And yet you do not walk away. Why? He turned back to her. Because I have not seen only your worst, he said. I saw you at the orphanage. She frowned. I did what anyone with a conscience would have done, she said. No, he replied. Many would have smiled and said, we will see, and let the matter drown in papers. You gave your word in front of those children. You tied your name to theirs. That was not nothing. I almost refused, she admitted. When you spoke as if my support were already decided, I thought you presumptuous. I still think you were. Probably, he said, and this time there was a hint of humor in his voice. But when they looked at me, she went on, I remembered the man in the square. The way the crowd laughed because I gave them permission. I could not bear to hear a similar laughter from those children later, when they learned I had broken a promise. He nodded slowly. Then the square was not wasted, he said. If it taught you that, do you intend to remind me of it until I die? She asked. Only until I believe you have truly remembered it yourself, he answered. She folded her arms, then let them fall again. The gesture felt too much like armor. You said yesterday that you are not of noble blood, she said, that you are a steward's son. Tell me more. Why? He asked cautiously. Because I am to bind myself to you before God and the law, she said. I should know something of the man behind the coins and the contracts, unless you prefer that I marry a ledger. He smiled faintly. A ledger would be easier, he said. It would not argue. I have seen you argue, she replied. Do not pretend meekness now. He sobered. My father managed Don Esteban's estates, he said. Fields, storehouses, accounts. My mother washed linens in the big house when she was young. They both worked from dawn to dusk. Don Esteban had no children. He watched my father, saw his loyalty. He noticed me running in the courtyard, I suppose. One day he called me inside and asked if I wished to learn my letters. And you did, she guessed. I did, he said. At first my father objected. He said I belonged with the other boys. Don Esteban told him, if the boy can read, he can help you. If he cannot, he will always push a broom. Eventually my father agreed. So you were raised between two worlds, she said. Not quite servant, not quite family. Exactly, he replied. I sat at a small table in the corner when important guests came. I listened. I learned numbers, contracts, the way a polite insult can cost a man his place at court. That sounds lonely, she said before she could stop herself. He gave a small shrug. It was my life, he said. Don Esteban grew fond of me. He brought me to Seville when he expanded his business. He took me aboard ships into counting houses. He showed me ledgers thicker than some Bibles, and he repeated the same lesson again and again. "What lesson?" she asked. "That I must never forget where I came from," he said. He said, "If you ever step on a man just because his boots are worn, I will come back from the grave to pull you down by the ankle." Catalina almost smiled. "A vivid image," she said. "He was a vivid man," Miguel replied. "And now," she asked, "you hold more power than many who were born into it. Have you forgotten?" He met her eyes. "Did you see me step on the beggar's hand yesterday?" he asked. "No," she said. "Did you see me ignore Senora Rosa with her laundry?" he continued. "No," she repeated. "Then I have not forgotten," he said. "But when you spoke to me in the square, I felt again what it is to be mud under someone else's shoe. That old feeling woke, and I did not like it." She looked down at the gravel. "I made you feel that," she said quietly. "Yes," he answered. "You did. And now you hold my house in your hand," she went on. "You could close it if you wished." "I could," he agreed. "Do you intend to?" she asked. He did not answer immediately. His face was serious, not cold. "I intended many things when I first heard your father's proposal," he said at last. "Part of me wanted to refuse at once. Another part saw the chance to tie my life to a house I had once admired from outside its gates. Then, in the square, I met you without your title. I thought I saw who you truly were. It made my choice harder." "And now?" she pressed. "Now," he said slowly, "I see two women in you. The one who laughed in the square, and the one who stood in front of a family in the courtyard yesterday and used her rank to protect them from eviction. I am still deciding which one you will be when the music ends and the guests go home." Her throat tightened. "You are not the only one deciding," she said. "I too must choose what kind of man I will stand beside. A man who remembers hunger, or a man who enjoys watching others taste it." He blinked, then inclined his head slightly. "Fair," he said. She took a step closer, the distance between them shrinking. "I will not pretend I am suddenly humble," she said. "I have been proud since I could walk. People bowed to me when I was still too small to understand why. It has shaped me. It will not vanish because you frown at me in a garden." "I do more than frown," he murmured. "I know," she said. "You hold a mirror. I dislike what I see in it, but I dislike more the thought of never looking." A faint smile touched his mouth. "You grow braver when you speak like this," he said. "Without an audience." "There is always an audience," she replied. "Servants, walls, God, and now you." He looked at her more closely. "Why did you really come here this morning?" he asked. "Not for contracts, not for pride." She hesitated. "Because I am afraid," she said finally. "Not only of ruin, of you." "Of me?" he repeated, startled. "You stand in front of me and do not bend," she said. "You look at me as if my title were a coat I can remove. No one has ever done that. It is unnerving." "Unnerving enough to send you running?" he asked. "Not exactly," she answered. "Unnerving enough to make me wish to be seen as more than a coat, more than a name." "And you think I can give you that?" he asked. "You already do," she said. "When you look at me with contempt, it cuts deeper than any servant's fear. When you look at me with something else, I do not know yet what that feels like." His gaze softened despite himself. "I have tried to hold on to contempt," he admitted. "It is comfortable, it keeps a man safe." "And?" she asked. "And it slips," he said, "in the orphanage, at the square with the beggar. Even here, now, with your hair unpinned and your gown creased." She flushed. "I came in haste," she said. "I can see that," he replied. "It suits you." She made an impatient sound. "Do not mock me," she said. "I am not mocking," he answered. "I am telling you that for the first time, you look like a person and not a portrait." The words were absurdly simple, yet they steadied something inside her. She drew a slow breath. "If I say that I wish this marriage to happen," she said carefully, "that I wish to stand with you not only for my father's sake, but because I have begun to admire the man you are, what will you answer?" He studied her, searching her face for any sign of play acting. "Do you admire me," he said, "or the power I wield on your behalf?" "I admired you in the square before I knew your name," she answered. Not in the moment I insulted you. Later, when I lay awake and could not forget that you did not crawl, I resented it, but I admired it. And at the orphanage. And when you told that boy you expected him to do well, you speak to people as if they matter. That is not your fortune doing the talking. That is you. His shoulders eased a little. And love? He asked quietly. You have not used that word. She looked directly at him. I do not know if what I feel is love, she said. I only know that when I imagine you walking away, taking your silence and your strange calm and your rough lessons with you, the thought hurts more than any gossip in Seville. Is there another name for that? He let out a breath that seemed deeper than the air of the garden. I have tried not to imagine you beside another man, he said, even a duke. The image does not sit well with me. So we are both uneasy, she said. It appears so, he replied. A small, uncertain smile passed between them. What will you do then? She asked. I will not break the engagement, he said quietly. That much I can tell you today. Relief washed through her so quickly she had to hide it by looking away. You sound as if you grant me a reprieve, she said, forcing lightness into her tone. I grant us both a chance, he answered. We have little time before the wedding, but enough to decide how we will live it. I do not want a house where you flinch at every memory of the square, and I do not want to spend my days measuring your humility like a miser counts coins. What do you want? She asked. A wife who can admit she was wrong without collapsing, he said. A partner who will stand with me in the orphanage courtyard and in the square and in rooms like your father's study. Someone who will let my past sharpen her compassion, and who will let her past sharpen my patience. And what do you offer in return? She asked, half teasing, half serious. My respect, he said simply, not the kind that bows to a title, but the kind that listens when you speak. My protection, not only of your lands, but of your dignity when others seek to use you as a story. And my effort. I cannot promise I will never be proud or harsh, but I can promise I will not use my power to make you small. The offer was more precious to her than any jewel her father had ever given. I speak like a man making a business contract, she said softly. It is the language I know, he replied, but the terms are not only written on paper. She stepped close enough now that she could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, the tiny lines at the corners of his eyes. Then here is my part, she said. I will strive to remember that every person who bows to me has a life when they straighten again. I will count my words before I drop them, as I would count gold. And when I forget, you may remind me. Privately, not in a crowded square, he asked. No, she said. Leave the squares to children and vendors. Our lessons can be learned elsewhere. He nodded. Agreed, he said. They stood very still for a moment, the strange quiet of an agreement settling around them. He offered his hand, not as a suitor this time, but as an equal. Shall we start again, Catalina de Aranda? He asked. Not as the Duchess and the porter, as the woman and the man who must share a life. She looked at his hand, then placed hers in it. Yes, Miguel Herrera, she said. Let us start again. His fingers closed gently around hers. They did not move closer. They did not kiss. They simply stood there, joined by that small point of contact, feeling the old ground shift beneath them. Above the garden wall, the city roofs shone in the growing light. Somewhere in the square, a boy shouted about fresh bread. Somewhere else, a beggar stretched his hand. Inside the palace, servants began to stir for the day's work. In the garden, for the first time, Catalina felt that her future might be something she chose alongside another, instead of something chosen for her. The city woke before the sun on the day of the wedding. Voices rose earlier than usual in the streets, sharper, more excited. Vendors set out their stalls with extra care. Servants hurried through the palace corridors with trays and flowers and ribbons. Even the bells seemed to ring a little more insistently. Eleanor tugged at the stays of Catalina's gown. Breathe in, Your Grace, she murmured. I am breathing, Catalina answered. Not enough, Eleanor muttered and pulled again. This must sit properly. Everyone will be looking at you. Everyone always is, Catalina said. Today they will simply have a better excuse. Elena risked a small smile. Are you afraid? She asked, fingers moving quickly through Catalina's hair. Of the gown splitting? Catalina said dryly. Yes. You know what I mean, Elena replied. Catalina glanced at her reflection. Her face was composed, eyes calm, mouth steady. Only she knew how fast her heart beat. I am afraid of many things, she said. Most of them have nothing to do with silk. Elena pinned the last strand of hair and stepped back. They are talking in the servants' hall, she said quietly. Some say Senor Herrera may change his mind. Catalina held her gaze in the mirror. And what do you say? She asked. I say he is not a man who plays with people's futures, Elena replied. But tongues wag, Your Grace. They say he could claim your lands even without the wedding and leave you. She stopped herself, horrified. I am sorry. I should not repeat such things. No, Catalina said softly. You should. I have spent too many years hearing only what people thought I wanted to hear. She rose, smoothing her gown. If he does not appear, she added, at least I will know who he truly is. And if he does, Elena asked. Then I will know that too, Catalina said. In the antechamber off the great hall, her father waited. He looked thinner in the morning light, his fine clothes hanging a little looser than they once had, but his back was straight. You look very like your mother today, he said when she entered. She had the same stubborn lift to her chin when she walked into the church. I hope the comparison stops there, Catalina said. She loved you. I do not know yet what I am about to love. You will, the Duke answered, or you will not. Love is its own creature. But you are not stepping into this blind, Catalina. You know more of the man than many brides know of their husbands on their wedding day. I know he could destroy us, she said. And he has not, the Duke replied simply. That tells me something. The rest you must discover yourself. He took her hands briefly. Whatever happens today, he said, you remain my pride. Not because you are a duchess, because you have begun to see beyond the edge of your own shadow. She blinked. That is a strange blessing to give a bride, she said. It is the only one worth giving, he answered. Before they could say more, Vargas appeared in the doorway. Your Excellency, he said, there is a situation at the gate. Not today, the Duke muttered. For once let the world solve its own troubles. It will not, Your Excellency, Vargas said unhappily. It has brought them to our door. Catalina straightened. What is it? She asked. A tenant family, Vargas said. From the lower vineyards. They say they have been ordered to leave their home for unpaid rent. They have come to plead. Her father swore under his breath. Of all the days, he said. Send them away. Tell them to speak to the steward tomorrow. They say tomorrow is too late, Vargas replied. The steward has already found another family to take the house. They have nowhere to go tonight. Catalina felt something tighten inside her. Bring them in, she said. Catalina, the Duke began, this is not the time. It is exactly the time, she interrupted softly. If we are to stand before God and speak of vows and mercy, we cannot ignore someone being pushed into the road outside our own gate. He stared at her for a moment, then gave a small, resigned nod. Very well, he said. Vargas, show them to the side hall, not the main one. We will see them there. The side hall was less ornate, its walls hung with older paintings. A man and a woman stood near the door, clothes worn but neat. A girl of perhaps 10 clutched the woman's skirt. A boy, a few years younger, held his father's hand. When Catalina entered, their eyes widened. They bowed awkwardly. Your Grace, the man said. Your Excellency, forgive us. We would not disturb you, but... He faltered. Speak, Catalina said. You have come this far. The woman began to cry softly. We have had a bad harvest, the man said, voice rough. The vines were blighted. We paid what we could, but the steward says we still owe 3 months' rent. He says we must leave today. We have nowhere to go, Your Grace. The children... He broke off, swallowing. The steward says he is only following orders, the woman added. We thought perhaps you did not know. The Duke looked pained. I cannot oversee every rent and every vine, he said. The steward has his accounts. If he has decided to make the numbers easy, Catalina cut in, by pushing 4 people out of their home on the day his Duchess is supposed to speak of love. Her father glanced at her, surprised by the sharpness in her tone. Vargas cleared his throat. Your Excellency, he said, the steward warned that if we do not keep to the payments, the lenders will grow more impatient. We cannot risk losing everything, Catalina finished. Yes, I know the song now. I have heard its chorus often enough. She looked at the family. How much? She asked. Vargas blinked. Your Grace. How much are they behind? She repeated. Vargas shifted uncomfortably. 3 months, as they said, he answered. 8 silver each month. Catalina did the sum quickly. 24 silver, she said. We are about to sign papers involving more gold than I can picture, and for the price of a necklace clasp, we would put these children on the road. Your Grace, Vargas protested, it is not only them. If we make exception once— Exception, she said. This is not an exception. This is justice. They had a bad harvest. That is risk, not laziness. The man bowed his head. If there was work, I would take it, he said. I will work extra hours. I will pay what we owe, just do not send us away today. Catalina unfastened a small ring from her finger, one with a modest stone. Take this to the jeweler in the square, she said to Vargas. He knows our house. Ask him for the fair worth in coin. Pay the arrears from that. Vargas stared. Your Grace, you cannot— I can, she said, and so I do. She turned to the man. You will not be evicted, she said. You will work as you promised, and we will review your rent after the next harvest. If you waste this chance, I will not protect you again. The man choked out a thank you. The woman dropped to her knees, clutching the hem of Catalina's gown. Stand up, Catalina said gently. I am not a saint. I am a woman who has finally learned how to use her name for something other than pride. The woman rose, tears streaking her cheeks. God bless you, Your Grace, she whispered. God bless your marriage. The girl peeped up shyly. You look like a queen, she said. I look like a woman with too much lace, Catalina replied. Pray for me that I learn to wear it well. The boy, wide-eyed, blurted, Is it true you scolded a man in the square, and now you must marry him as punishment? Diego, his mother hissed. Catalina froze, then laughed unexpectedly. It is one way to tell the story, she said. Ask me again in a year, and I will tell you whether it was punishment or blessing. A movement by the doorway caught her eye. Miguel stood there half in shadow, coat already buttoned for the ceremony. He must have come along the corridor and paused when he saw the family. Their eyes met. How long have you been there? She asked. Long enough to understand, he said. He stepped into the room. Senor, the tenant man said, recognizing him with a start. We did not mean to trouble you. We know you have important things. Your home is important, Miguel said. Do you have work for the next weeks? The man hesitated. We have the vines, he said, and my wife sews when she can, but there is no extra. Miguel nodded. Come to the river ward tomorrow, he said. Ask for Pedro at the warehouse near the old crane. Tell him Miguel sent you. There is always need for strong hands when shipments arrive. It will not make you rich, but it will keep the stew pot from going empty. The man's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you, senor, he said. I will not waste it. See that you don't, Miguel replied. The family left with Vargas, clutching their chance like a fragile treasure. When they were gone, the Duke exhaled. You were bold, Catalina, he said. And you, Miguel. Between the two of you, I may have nothing left to manage but prayers. Miguel glanced at him. We cannot build a future on people thrown from their homes, he said. It is bad business. And worse morality. The Duke's mouth twitched. You sound like Don Esteban, he said. I hope so, Miguel replied. The Duke clapped his hands lightly. Enough, he said. The priest will not wait forever. Go, both of you. Make your vows before you start rebuilding my estate, according to your own principles. He left them in the hall. For a moment, neither spoke. You handled that family well, Miguel said at last. I learned from someone, Catalina replied. A man who seems to think people matter more than ledgers. Sometimes they even make the ledgers better, he said. She studied his face. You came, she said softly. I did, he answered. Despite the rumors, she added. Rumors are easy, he said. Promises are not. I have no wish to be a man whose word can be blown away by the first wind of gossip. She let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Then let us go, she said. Before I learn, there is yet another tenant at the gate. They walked out together to the waiting carriage that would take them the short distance to the church. The city watched. People craned their necks as the carriage passed. Some whispered, some smiled. Some simply stared, hungry for a story they could repeat later. Outside the church, a crowd had gathered, nobles in fine clothes, townspeople in their Sunday best, children hoisted onto shoulders for a better view. The bishop greeted them with solemn warmth. "Are you ready?" he asked quietly. "No," Catalina said, "but I will step forward anyway." "Good," the bishop replied. "Those are the best vows." Inside, candles glowed, the smell of wax and stone and incense wrapped around them. Miguel and Catalina took their places before the altar, side by side. The Duke stood behind Catalina, Ruiz and Vargas further back. Eleanor, squeezed among other servants near the rear, twisted her apron between her fingers. The murmurs faded as the ceremony began. The bishop spoke of union and sacrifice, of choice and duty. Catalina listened with strange calm. Every word about pride and humility seemed aimed at her, but there was no sting now, only a quiet recognition. When the time came, the bishop looked at Miguel first. "Miguel Herrera," he said, "do you come here freely and without reservation to give yourself in marriage to Catalina de Aranda?" Miguel took a breath. "Your Excellency," he said, "if I may ask a favor before I answer." The bishop raised his brows. "This is most unusual," he said, "but speak." Miguel turned not only toward the bishop, but toward the assembled faces. "I will answer your question," he said, "but first I ask the patience of all present." A ripple of surprise ran through the church. Catalina's heart thudded once hard. "Miguel," the Duke murmured under his breath, "do not make a spectacle." "Perhaps a small one," Miguel answered quietly without looking back. He faced the people. "Some of you know," he said, voice carrying clearly, "that the first time I stood before Her Grace it was not in a church or a palace. It was in the square. I had a crate in my arms and dust on my boots. She had a clear path until I stumbled into it." A rustle moved through the crowd. People who had heard the story nodded. Others leaned forward. "She spoke to me then," Miguel went on, with a sharp tongue. Her words made the people laugh. I left in silence, carrying more than my crate. Catalina felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she did not look away. "When I saw her again," Miguel continued, "she stood in this house as a duchess, and I stood beside her as a man with gold in his pockets. I confess to you all, I came with anger in my heart. I wanted her to feel what happens when laughter turns against you. I let a cruel story be told in her presence, and did not stop it." He paused. The church was very still. "But," he said, "there is more than one story between us." He glanced briefly at Catalina, and there was something in his gaze that softened her knees. "I have also seen this woman," he said, "use her rank to protect children she did not know. I have seen her stop in her wedding gown to save a family from the road. I have watched her admit she was wrong, not only to me in private, but to herself where it matters most." He looked at the nobles. "Many of you know what it is to be proud," he said. "Few of us know what it is to kneel. I tell you today, I have seen Catalina de Aranda kneel, not before me, not before gold, but before what is right." A murmur of surprise and respect rippled through the crowd. He turned fully back to the bishop. "You asked if I come here freely," he said. "I do. I choose this union, not because her lands need my gold, not because contracts demand it, but because my heart has learned to love the woman who grew out of her own shadow." He took Catalina's hand. "I, who once carried crates for others, wish to carry her burdens," he said, looking into her eyes. "I will walk beside her in squares and in vineyards, in orphanages and in halls like this. I will remind her when pride rises, and I will let her remind me when resentment returns. I choose her, freely." The bishop's eyes shone. "Then say the words," he said. "Yes," Miguel said, "I come freely, and I give myself in marriage to her." The bishop turned to Catalina. "And you, Catalina de Aranda," he said, "do you come here freely and without reservation to give yourself in marriage to Miguel Herrera?" She did not look at him. She looked at Miguel. "When I met you," she said, voice steady but full, "I did not see you. I saw only my own reflection in the eyes of those who laughed at my words. I treated you as less than a man. I despised humble work, while my own house was sinking on gold I had not earned. I believed my title made me better. I was wrong." A stir went through the church. Some faces stiffened at such bluntness, others softened. "I ask you all to hear this," she said, turning her head just enough to address the assembly. "I was wrong. Not because the man I insulted turned out to be wealthy, not because my father's lands depend on his goodwill. I was wrong because every person in the square that day was worth more than my pride." She faced Miguel fully again. You came into my life with a crate in your arms and a lesson I did not want, she said. You could have crushed my house, and you did not. You could have humiliated me as I humiliated you, and you tried a little. A soft ripple of laughter rose. But your heart would not let you complete the revenge. Instead, you have held a mirror. You have shown me what respect looks like. I have begun to love the man who does this. Not the fortune, not the name, the man. His eyes glistened. He tightened his grip on her hand. I come freely, she said to the bishop, and I give myself in marriage to Miguel Herrera. I choose to walk beside the steward's son who became a master of his own dignity. The bishop's voice trembled slightly as he resumed the ceremony. Then, in the sight of God and of these witnesses, he said, "Let your vows be sealed." They spoke the formal words, repeating the phrases countless couples had spoken before them. Yet each phrase felt like a step on new ground. When it was done, the bishop smiled. "You may seal your union with a kiss," he said. Miguel hesitated for a half-breath, searching her face. She nodded just once. He leaned in and touched his lips to hers, gentle and sure. The kiss was not long nor bold, but it carried all the quiet promises they had just made. The church erupted in applause. Nobles clapped politely, some more warmly than others. Townspeople stamped their feet. Children shouted. When they turned toward the doors to walk out together, Catalina's eyes stung with tears she did not try to hide. Outside, the square waited. The same stones, the same steps. But the crowd was different now. People pressed close, not to mock, but to see, to throw petals instead of words. The chestnut boy waved wildly. "Long live the Duchess," he shouted. "Long live Señor Miguel." The beggar near the steps, face washed for the occasion, lifted his hat. "Bless you," he cried. "Bless you both." The family Catalina had saved that morning stood to one side, the children clutching their parents' hands. The little girl beamed. "She looks happy," she whispered. "She is," the boy said with certainty. "I can tell." Miguel and Catalina descended the church steps side by side. "This square has seen us at our worst," Catalina murmured. "And now it sees us try to be better," Miguel replied. "Let it remember both." They walked through the crowd. People who once would have bowed in stiff, fearful silence now called out congratulations. Some still hung back, uncertain, unused to such proximity. Catalina made a point of meeting their eyes, of nodding, of letting her name fall like a promise instead of a threat. Later in the palace, the celebration continued. Music, wine, laughter, dances. Catalina and Miguel moved among the guests as husband and wife, receiving blessings, enduring jokes, sharing smiles. At one point, Ricardo approached, a bit sheepish. "Cousin," he said to Catalina, "I owe you an apology for my story the other night." "You owe my husband one as well," Catalina replied. Ricardo bowed to Miguel. "I was unkind," he said. "I thought only of amusement. I did not consider—" "That word's cost," Miguel finished gently. "I know. Consider it now." "I will," Ricardo said. He looked genuinely chastened. Catalina nodded, feeling a strange, quiet satisfaction. When the crowd thinned and the music softened, Miguel and Catalina slipped out to the balcony overlooking the garden where they had spoken before. The night air was cool. The city lay like a dark sea beyond the walls, pricked with small lights. "Are you tired?" Miguel asked. "Yes," she said. "And not at all." He laughed softly. "You spoke bravely in the church," he said. "You risked your dignity before everyone." "I have misused my dignity in front of them often enough," she replied. "It was time to use it well." He leaned his elbows on the railing. "There will be days when we forget," he said, "when pride pricks you, when anger pricks me." "Yes," she agreed, "there will be days when I am tempted to snap at a servant, or at you, and days when I remember the square and want to throw it back in your face," he added. She turned to him. "Then we will remember this day as well," she said. "This square, this church, this garden. We will remind each other." "I will remind you," he said, "and you will remind me." She stepped closer, laying her hand on his arm. "Do you regret nothing?" she asked. "Not even a little." "Only that I did not move aside faster in the square," he said, smiling. "Then we would have been spared a great deal of trouble, and we might never have learned a great deal of truth," she replied. "True," he said. "I suppose I am grateful to the crate." Poor fruit, she said, sacrificed to our education. They laughed together quietly. Below, a servant crossed the garden carrying a lantern. The light swung gently, throwing brief patterns on the stone. Miguel grew serious again. "Catalina," he said. "Yes, I love you," he said simply. Not as a duchess, as the woman who walked out of herself to meet me. Her throat tightened. "I love you," she answered. Not as a merchant made noble. As the boy who learned to read in a steward's house and grew into a man who would not let me remain small. He took her hand. "Then let us build something worthy of that love," he said. "A house where no one is humiliated for sport, where your title and my gold serve something higher than our own pride. And where no tenant is evicted on my wedding day," she added. "Especially that," he agreed. They stood there hand in hand, watching the city that had seen their arrogance and their awakening. In the days and years that followed, Seville would tell many stories about the Duchess and the steward's son. Some would be exaggerated, some softened, some hardened by memory, but one thing would remain clear to those who watched closely. In that house, after that wedding, the laughter in the square changed tone. It no longer rose at the expense of the weak, but often because a proud woman and a once resentful man had learned to stand together, to bend when necessary, and to lift others when they could. And whenever Catalina heard the bells of Seville ring over the crowded square, she would remember the day she made a man small, and the day she chose to make herself humble, and she would know that the distance between humiliation and love is measured not by rank or gold, but by the courage to say I was wrong and the grace to answer, "I forgive you." Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.